one of my really good friends thinks I'm crazy. My friend Josh, who came when I taught Joel, thinks I'm crazy when I told him that, but I don't care. I like it. We're going to the book of Judges. And he's like, why do you like Judges? It's so dark. I was like, that's true. But it's so interesting. Because to me, it's kind of like, in Bible days, it's kind of like the Wild West of the Old Testament. Because this was a time when people did what they wanted. Anything goes. And that's interesting, because I grew up in a house where I was the only child. I was the only child, the only grandchild, and I was the only niece of my 2 uncles. And so when my uncles came in at Christmas and in summer, we watched what everybody else wanted to watch, what the adults wanted to watch, which was usually Westerns. So I grew up watching Westerns even when I didn't want to, when I'd rather watch the Smurfs. And so I've grown to have a great affection and appreciation for Westerns in the West. And we're going to be talking about a pretty remarkable woman who was a judge. And for my money, she's the best judge. Don't put too much on my money because I don't have a whole lot of money right now. Because I just paid for breaks this morning. Yay, hallelujah. But she is definitely my favorite. And we're going to be talking about Deborah, or Deborah, if that's right, Jack. I don't know. I said that exactly right. Deborah.
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 Gosh.
No. Deborah, tomato. So we're going to go to Judges 4, and we're going to be in chapters 4 and 5. Now, what I want to do is a little different. I'm not going to go verse by verse, and we're not going to delve into each and every verse. What I want to do is I want to go through and I want to read these 2 chapters, and then we're going to go in and we're going to take a look at Deborah. We're going to highlight some things, and I want you guys to chime in, because I think this is one of those times when it would be really nice to have a discussion and a conversation. So here we go. And if some people are willing, Jeffrey, to help me read, that would be great. Okay. All right, so I'm going to start in chapter 4. I'll start reading, and then we'll go from there. But after Ehud had died, the people of Israel again did what was evil. And I'm reading from the Complete Jewish Study Bible. I've also got the Tree of Life and the KJ and the NKJV too that I've referred. But I'm reading from the Complete Jewish Study Bible. But after Ehud had died, the people of Israel again did what was evil from Adonai's perspective. So Adonai handed them over to Yavin, king of Canaan. He ruled from Hatzor, and the commander of his army was Sisera, who lived in Haroshet Hagoyim. I hope I'm saying that right. The people of Israel cried out to Adonai because he had 900 iron chariots, and for 20 years he cruelly oppressed the people of Israel. Now Deborah, a woman and a prophet, the wife of Lapido, was judging Israel at the time. She used to sit under Deborah's palm between Ramah and Beit El, which is basically Bethel, in the hills of Ephraim. And the people of Israel would come to her for judgment. She sent for Barak, the son of Abinoam, from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, Adonai has given you this order. Go march to Mount Tabor and take with you 10,000 men from the people of Naphtali and Zebulun. I will cause Sisera, the commander of Yavin's army, to encounter you at the Kishon River with his chariots and troops, and I will hand him over to you. Barak answered to her, I will go. If you go with me, I'll go. But if you won't go with me, I won't go. She replied, yes, I will gladly go with you, but the way you are doing it, it will bring you no glory, because Adonai will hand Sisera over to a woman. Then Deborah set out and went with Barak to Kadesh. Barak summoned Zebulun and Naphtali to come to Kadesh. 10,000 men followed him, and Deborah went up with him. Now, wait a minute, let me this name. Was that? Sorry guys, just a minute.
We can bear with you.
Okay, thank you. Heber, the Kenite, had cut himself off from the rest. Had separated himself from the Kenites. And this is of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses.
Mine says brother-in-law.
Yeah, it says different things.
Wow.
Yeah, in
The
Hebrew,
children of
it's just for Hebrew, it's hard to relate to the different relatives.
He's related. The Kenites are related to Moses' in-laws. We'll just say that to make it easier. Okay, now wait a minute. Which is close to Kedesh. Sisera was informed that Barak, the son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. So Sisera rallied his chariots, all 900 chariots, and all the troops he had with him from Haroshet Hagoyim to the Kishon River. Deborah said to Barak, "Get going. This is the day when Adonai will hand Sisera over to you. Adonai has gone out ahead of you." So Barak went down from Mount Tabor with 10,000 men following him, and Adonai threw Sisera, all his chariots, and his entire army into a panic before Barak's sword, so that Sisera got down from his chariot and fled on foot. But Barak pursued the chariots and the army all the way to Haroshet Hagoyim. Sisera's entire army was put to the sword, not one man was left. However, Sisera ran on foot to the tent of Yael, the wife of Heber the Kenite, because there was peace between Yavin, the king of Hatzor, and the family of Heber the Kenite. Yael went out to meet Sisera and said to him, "Come in, my lord, stay here with me, and don't be afraid." So she went into her tent, and she covered him with a blanket. He said to her, "Please give me a little water to drink. I'm thirsty." So she opened a goat skin of milk, gave him some to drink, and covered him up again. He said to her, "Stand at the entrance to the tent, and if anyone asks you if somebody is here, say no." But when he was deeply asleep, Yael, the wife of Heber, took a tent peg and a hammer in her hand, crept into him quietly, and drove the tent peg into his temple right through to the ground, so that he died without waking up. So here is Barak pursuing Sisera, and Yael steps out to meet him and says, "Come, I will show you the man you're looking for." He goes into her tent, and there is Sisera lying dead with a tent peg through his temple. Thus God on that day defeated Yavin, the king of Canaan, in the presence of the people of Israel. The hand of the people of Israel came down more and more heavily against Yavin, the king of Canaan, until they had completely destroyed Yavin, the king of Canaan. Okay, and Jeffrey, do you want to pick up for chapter 5?
Chapter 5, King James Version.
Mm-hmm.
How far do you want me to read?
You read how far you want, and what you don't read, I'll pick up from there. So you just read however much you want to.
Then sang Deborah and Barak, the son of Abinoam, on that day, saying, "Praise ye the Lord, for he avengeth of Israel, when the people willingly offered themselves. Hear, O you kings, give ear, O you princes. Even I will sing unto the Lord. I will sing praises to the Lord God of Israel. Lord, when thou wentest out of Seir, when thou marchest out of the fields at Edom, and earth trembled, and the heavens dropped. The clouds also dropped water. The mountains melted from before the Lord, even Sinai, from the Lord God of Israel. In the day of Shamgar, the son of Anak, in the days of Jael, the highways were unoccupied, and the travelers walked through byways. The inhabitants of the valley villages ceased. They ceased in Israel until that I, Deborah, arose, a mother in Israel. 8. They choose new gods. Then was war in the gates. Was there a shield or spear seen among 40,000 in Israel? Question 9. My heart is toward the governors of Israel, that offered themselves willingly among the people. Bless ye the Lord. 10. Speak, ye that ride on white asses, yet that sit in judgment, and walk by the way. 11. They that are delivered from the noise of archers in the place of drawing water, there shall they rehearse the righteous acts of the Lord, even the righteous acts toward the inhabitants of his village in Israel. Then shall the people of the Lord go down to the gates. 12. Awake, awake, Deborah, awake, awake. Utter a song, arise, Barak, and lead thy captivity captive, thou son of Abinoam. 13. Then he made him that remaineth have dominion over the nobles among the people. The Lord made me have dominion over the mighty. 14. Out of Ephraim was there a root of them against Amalek. After that, Benjamin among thy people. Out of Machar came down governors, and out of Zebulun they that handled the pen of the writer. 15. And the princes of Issachar, were with Deborah. Even Issachar and also Barak, he was sent on foot into the valley. For the divisions of Reuben, there were great thoughts of heart. 16. Why abidest thou among the sheepfold, to hear the bleatings of the flock? Question. For the divisions of Reuben, there were great searchings of heart. 17. Gilead abode beyond Jordan, and why did Dan remain in ships? Asher continued on the seashore, and abode in his breaches. 18. Zebulun and Naphtali were a people that jeopardized their lives. Jeopardized their lives unto the death in the high place of the field. 19. The king came and fought them, and fought the king of Canaan, and Taganah by a waters of Gibeah. They took no gain of money. 20. They fought from heaven, the stars and the horse fought against Sisera. 21. The river of Kishon swept them away, the ancient river, the river Kishon. O my soul, thou hast trodden down strength. 22. Then were the households horse hooves broken by the means of the praisings and the prancings of their mighty ones. 23. Curse ye, Mizraz, said the angel of the Lord. Curse ye bitterly the inhabitants thereof, because they came not to the help of the Lord, to the help of the Lord against the mighty. 24. Blessed above women shall Jael, the wife of Heber, the Kenite, be. Blessed shall she be above women in the tent. 25. He asked for water, and she gave him milk. She brought forth butter in a worthy dish. 26. She put her hand to the nail, and her right hand to the workman's hammer. And with the hammer she smote Sisera. She smote off his head, when she had pierced and stricken through his temple. 27. At her feet he bowed. He fell, he lay down, at her feet. He bowed, he fell. Where he bowed, there he fell down dead. 28. The mother of Sisera looked out of the window and cried through the lattice, Why is his chariot so long in coming? Why tarry the wheels of his chariot? 29. Her wise ladies answered her, Yes. Yet she returned answer to herself. 30. Have they not sped? Have they not divided the prey? To every man a damsel or two? To Sisera a prey of divers colors? A prey of divers colors? Of needlework or divers colors? of needlework on both sides, meat for the neck of them that take the spoil? Question 31. So let all thine enemies perish, O Lord, but let them that love him be as the sun when he goeth forth in his might, and the land had rest 40 years.
Thank you. So here we have in verse 4, in chapter 4, we have the actual narrative account of what happened, and then chapter 5 we have the song of Deborah, the song that she composed that sort of filled in some of the gaps and gave us some details. And the thing about, and another thing I love about the book of the Judges is that the judges are such interesting personalities. You see so many different varieties of human beings. Some you see the good, the bad, and the ugly, to borrow again from another Western reference. And to me, Deborah is definitely among the good. She, I think, for in my opinion, I think is the best judge in the whole book. She is such an exceptional woman, and I think it's interesting, and that's so interesting with the people. Some of the people that I love the most in the Bible are the ones that come on, you see them, you see the spotlight on them, they're there for a minute and then they're gone, and you don't get to spend a lot of time and sort of ruminate and chew on who they are, and we don't get to spend the time with her that we get to spend with, say, Sarah and Abraham, or with Leah and Rachel. And for me, I would rather spend more time with Deborah, but that's out of my hands. So what about Deborah makes her so special? I mean, there's so much to say there. When we're introduced to her in verse 4 in chapter 4, it says, now Deborah, and like I said, I've got different translations. And I like how the Complete Jewish Study Bible introduces her, because it says, now Deborah, a woman and a prophet, the wife of Lapidoth, was judging Israel at that time. That's unique, because it says she's a woman and a prophetess. It doesn't say she's a woman and the wife of Lapidoth and a prophetess and a judge. It says she's a woman and she's a prophetess and then she's the wife. And that to me says volumes, because most women who are married, you hear about, that's the first thing you know about them, is that they're married or that they're not married. And usually you get their husband's name before you know anything else. Before we know that she's married and she's the wife of Lapidoth, we know she's a woman and she's a prophetess. That says a lot, I think. That says a lot about her gifting. It says a lot about her as an individual. She was really, I think this is a woman that was really touched by God. Obviously she was. She was a prophetess and a judge, but I think maybe he gave her just a little bit of extra. When he was sprinkling that whatever it is that, touches people and they're special, I think on the day he saw her, he's like, I'm going to give you a little extra. So here you go. You get a little more. Because she's a wife, she's a prophetess, and she's a judge. And the fact that she's a wife and a prophetess is pretty special, but the fact that she's a judge just sort of throws it over the top. That's the cherry on top of the whole sundae. Because women weren't judges. Women didn't have that kind of authority. And that says so much about God, the value, the gifting that God gave her, her wisdom, her judgment, her character. The fact that a nation full of men, men were front and center in the nation at that time. Women were mostly in the background. For him to bring her up and set her in a place of authority and to give her the gifting that he gave her, that just, I don't know. I almost get chills when I think about that. I could just go on and on and on. And you look at her name. Now, I think most of us are familiar with the meaning of her name. Even before I knew what biblical names were, I knew Deborah meant bee. But I did just a little bit of research. not much, on the bee. And it's interesting how names suit the person. And this is from a Christian site. And I'm just going to read a little bit of this. It says, bees and honey are mentioned quite often in the Bible. This can only mean that bees, in particular, play a significant role in both Christianity and Judaism. They symbolize a lot of positive attributes that we can identify through a variety of scriptures. In this article, you'll learn the specific definitions, behind the bee. So, bee references have been around for centuries. They have been part of various scriptures in the Bible. They have been consistently used to describe various positive characteristics such as wisdom, wealth, and industry. Equally, honey has its own limelight in many religious texts. And I think honey is just the byproduct. It's the byproduct of the bees. And if you think about it, her name goes along. Isn't it interesting that in Proverbs 31, all these books and all these centuries later, you have a description of the ideal woman of God. What is a virtuous woman? And in a lot of those verses, that woman, she is a wife, she is a mother, but she is also a woman of industry. She is also a woman who's at work. Much emphasis is given to the fact that she has judgment, that she is respected, that she is someone that her family and people in the community look to. And I think Deborah, just about more than any other woman in the Old Testament, I think really comes close to that. Even though Proverbs 31 is after her, but you look at those characteristics, you could put her in there and have her fall into place. The fact that another interesting thing about her that is sort of not said about her, but is kind of said about her, because when I commented earlier with Alvin and Kathy about how, what affects you, Alvin, affects Kathy because the two of you are one. It says that she's the wife of Lapidol. I did just a little bit of research to find out what his name means, and his name can mean light, enlightened one, or torches. And I like the idea of a torch because that maybe gives us a little bit of insight into their home life and their relationship. The torch is the piece of wood that you have, whatever the kindling, the whatever, the stuff that makes the fire there, that gives it light. But the torch holds the light. And without the torch, the light can't shine on top of it, but without the torch, they need each other. The torch and the light need each other, is what I'm saying. And maybe he's there. He lifts her up. He's supportive of her. Maybe that's a way of, I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into that, but there's not a lot there. He's obviously, it doesn't say that there was any disagreement between them. I think he was in support of what she did. In chapter 5, let's see, where's that verse? Wait a minute. Verse 7, Deborah calls herself, it says, Deborah arose a mother in Israel. Now, there are two interpretations for that. Some people think that means that she was a spiritual mother, that she was a mother to the people, that she was somebody they looked to for maternal wisdom and guidance. And I think you can make that case, but I think you can also make the case that she was a mother. And I think I base that on the fact that anytime a woman is mentioned in the Old and the New Testament, and she's married, and she can't have children, it says that she's barren. Just a few examples of that. Sarah, in Genesis 11, verses 29 and 30, when we're introduced to Abram and Sarai. It mentions Sarai as the wife, and then in verse 30 it says, and Sarah was barren. 1 Samuel 1, verse 2, Hannah, one of the wives of Elkanah, the mother of Samuel. She's introduced as his wife, and then it says that she is barren and has no children. Luke 1, verses 5 through 7, we're introduced to Zacharias. Zacharias is married to Elizabeth. It talks about how she is a daughter of Aaron. It says they both walked blameless in the commandments of the Lord. And then the next verse, verse 7, it says that she was barren. So I think if Deborah wouldn't have been a biological mother, I think that would have been emphasized. So I think she was a wife, a mother, a judge, and a prophetess. And girl was busy. No wonder she had to meet at the palm trees in the hills between Ramah and Bethel, because normally the judges would go down to the city gates, and that's where they would have judgment. But I imagine that because she, had a house to run, she probably had kids in the house, she was a prophetess, she had everything, she went to the palm trees because that was probably the closest place to her house. And God was in that. God met her where she was. And I think it's interesting that in a nation of people, a nation of men, a nation of people that saw what was happening with Sisera and with King Jabin and how he was oppressing them, the only one that God raised up was a woman. And I think that says a lot, because maybe she was the one person in the nation at that time whose heart was so in tune and so submitted and so humbled in the presence of God. He knew he could raise her up and use her, and she would be able to lead the people. I'm jumping around, sorry.
Oh, it's good.
I think you can see how exceptional she is because of her gift. She's a prophetess. She has that gift. She has great leadership and wisdom. She was appointed as a judge. And she has great initiative in industry. She's a good wife. She's obviously, everything's obviously in tune at home. Because if her home life were a mess and things weren't running right, I don't know that God, because that's pretty telling. It seems like your home life and your spiritual life kind of run together. And if you've got it together at home, and you're a Christian, and you're in tune with God and spiritual things, more than likely your spiritual life. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't, times when, you have to put out 40 fires in 10 minutes. We all have that. But for the most part, it says a lot about her behind the scenes, and it says a lot about her in the spotlight, that she was able to stand there and she was able to handle the pressure. She was able to, balance it all somehow. And I think that was just God. I think that was another gift from God. He gave her that balance and that patience and that composure under grace that I don't have. Which is interesting when you compare her to Barak. Because in the translation I read, the Complete Jewish Study Bible, it just says when she sins, it's interesting that she has to send for Barak. He's not there. He's not already there. He's already waiting for a word from the Lord or for what she has to say, because he knows that she's a prophetess and that God's going to speak through her. But she has to send for him, which that's very telling. That says a lot about him. But in those verses, and then she gives him the message. It says, Adonai has given you this order in mind. But then I looked this out in the King James, the New King James, and in the Tree of Life version, it says, has God not already told you? Like God had already given the order previously. We don't see it or hear it, but he had already given the order. And he hasn't done it yet. And she has to send for him and tell him again, say, look, this is what you're supposed to do. Go and do it. He's not there. He obviously doesn't want to do it. And the only way he'll go is if she agrees to go and basically hold his hand. And I think that says a lot. That's a great, you see so much in the leadership of those two people. You see the you see great leadership in her, and you see just not much leadership in him. And that's really sad too, because he's the military commander. He's the general. He has to lead the troops. And I don't know. I don't have any experience as a police officer, as a soldier, or serving, or anything like that. But if I'm going to go out into battle with a general, and he needs somebody there to help hold his hand, he doesn't have enough initiative to go and do things, I'm going to be scared. There's going to be a big prayer meeting between me and the Lord before we go out to battle, because I'm going to be questioning, what's going on? And I think the fact that she did go is probably one of the reasons why the Lord gave them success. If she wouldn't have gone, I think it would have probably been an utter and total disaster. I don't know that any of this would have happened, or if he would have gone out, it would have probably just been a bloodbath, and not in Israel's favor. And that's the thing. God rewards boldness, and he rewards courage, and not just of men, but also of women. And there are some examples, and I'm gonna give you chapter and verse references. You can look these up and look at them later. I'm just gonna mention them briefly. There are cases in the Bible where women have courage, not just Deborah, but others too, and he rewards that. Numbers 27, verses 1 through 11. You have the daughters of Zelophehad who go before Moses when Moses is parceling out the land and saying, this is your possession, this is your possession. Their father died in the wilderness and had no sons. And because before they spoke up, the land was inherited from father to son. There was no inheritance for daughters. Well, the daughters, when they were sitting listening to, the land getting parceled out, they had a meeting. And it's dangerous when 5 women get together and meet about anything. And they're like, that doesn't sound right. What about us? What about our father? Should he lose his land just because? I know, right?
That's the side effect.
Yeah, I mean, we could meet in that room and have a meeting, and Lord knows what we could do. Change the world, exactly. So they have the boldness to not just sit behind closed doors or behind closed tents and say this, but they actually go to the front of the tabernacle, to the meeting. They go outside, which is a huge thing. That is such boldness and such courage. Women did not do that. I'd say the only woman who even dared to do that was probably Miriam. And they went and they told Moses, they're like, look, what about us? Our father died in the wilderness. He doesn't have a son. We think that, is it not right that his inheritance should stay in the family? Should he lose his inheritance because he had no sons? So Moses said, I hear you. I'll go before God. I'll take your petition. And God said, they're right. And because those women had the boldness and the courage to step out, God honored what they